In and out of institutions for most of his life. Fortunately, most of them were institutions of higher education in New York, in Chicago, where he has been employed as a writer, editor, and director of public relations. Since leaving institutional life, he has been a freelance writer focusing on work with associations and not-for-profits. He was born and raised on Long Island with ancestral roots in Brooklyn and still considers himself a New Yorker, despite having lived in Oak Park for the past 20 years with his wife, Michelle. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Stern.
When I was growing up, I was lucky enough to hear lots of stories, including lots of stories about things that happened long before I was around. So I have a story about fathers and sons, but it's a story about my grandfather and his father. And I hope there's some baseball fans here tonight. Because my grandfather was a baseball man. When I knew him in his 70s, 80s, and 90s, his hands were gnarled and twisted by arthritis. But he always said it was because he took too many foul tips on his fingers when he was a catcher. Grandpa played baseball, watched baseball, analyzed baseball, taught baseball, and talked baseball. He talked about other things too, of course. He talked about walking a mailman's route near Coney Island for 30 years and how friendly neighborhood dogs followed him like some kind of government-issued Pied Piper. He talked about how his best friend was gassed during World War I and came home, but was never the same again. He talked about how he worked in the thermometer factory, but escaped before the chemicals could poison his nervous system, as they had the old men who worked there giving them the mercury shakes. He talked about old-time Brooklyn and old-time baseball, which in his mind were pretty much the same thing. You can't talk about Brooklyn and not talk about the Dodgers. I saw Zach Wheat play at Ebbets Field the year it opened, Grandpa remembered. No one remembers Zach Wheat anymore. That was 1913. Grandpa went back year after year until the old place closed. Like many men who later in life found themselves scattered around the New York area, he agreed with Brooklyn writer Pete Hamill, who believed that the three biggest villains of the 20th century were Hitler, Stalin, and Walter O'Malley, the Dodgers owner who took the team to Los Angeles in 1957. Of course, when you first saw the Dodgers play in the years before Ebbets Field, they were not yet the Dodgers. They were the Superbas. And before that, unfathomably, the Bridegrooms. They did not take on their familiar name until 1911. In those years, so many streetcar tracks crisscrossed Brooklyn that its citizens took their lives in their hands when crossing streets at intersections where as many as 6 lines converged. Some didn't make it. In the early 1900s, hundreds of pedestrians a year died in streetcar accidents. Hence, the residents of the borough were nicknamed Trolley Dodgers, a name the ball club shortened to Dodgers. My grandfather was a baseball man, but his father was not. He was a teamster, when that was a job description and not just the name of a union. He worked at Bossett's Lumberyard in the Bushwick section of Brooklyn. Before there were forklifts, a stack of lumber moved from one end of the yard to another, only if a gang of strong men loaded it onto a heavy wagon pulled by a team of enormous draft horses. My great-grandfather drove the team, a task that required physical strength, which he had in no short supply. Short, barrel-chested German immigrant, he resembled nothing more than a beer keg with arms and legs. In the style of the Kaisers, he wore a thick mustache and close-cropped hair that revealed patches where hair would not grow through scars obtained in youthful altercations in his native Bavaria. Grandpa liked to tell about returning by streetcar from a rare Sunday outing to Coney Island with his father, mother, and 2 sisters. There were 3 slightly built young men. Skinny punks, he called them, talking loudly and using language that offended the sensibilities of the day. Grandpa's father told him nicely that he didn't think they should be using words like those in front of his wife and children and asked him to please quiet down. They ignored him. He told them not so nicely that they had better shut up or suffer the consequences. They still ignored him. He then threw, physically, bodily, literally threw, first one and then another of the punks from the rear platform of the streetcar. The third left the car voluntarily. According to Grandpa, his father had but 3 things in his life: work, family, and God. He worked from sunup to sundown, 6 days a week, spent every evening with his family, and on Sundays he prayed. He had no time and little patience for frivolity like baseball. He did not care to watch his son play the game, and in fact did so only once. The ball fields of my grandfather's youth were hardly the manicured diamonds of Major League Baseball. Often they were simply open lots large enough to lay out the base paths with some room left over for the outfield. To a field such as this, Grandpa persuaded his father to come one Sunday afternoon after the family had attended Mass at St. Leonard's Church. Grandpa played left field that day in the uniform of the St. Leonard's Juniors. At this particular lot, there were no walls or fences. Only a shallow ditch separated left field from Myrtle Avenue, one of Brooklyn's main thoroughfares. It is the second inning, and the inevitable happens. Thwack! The opposing team's beefy cleanup hitter launches a towering shot to left. The left fielder knows from the sound alone that he will have far to run. Back he goes to the limit of the playing field, down one side of the ditch and up the other. Still further he goes back and finally camps where he knows the ball will come down, directly between the rails of the trolley tracks in the center of the street. From his left, the motorman rings out a warning. Get out of the way, or wait for the ball to come down. There is no choice, really. My grandfather is a baseball man. As he sights the ball through the thicket of overhead wires, brakes are applied. Steel wheels screech along iron tracks. Sparks fly. The bell is more insistent now. Hold on just a little longer. Whack! Horseye ball settles into leather glove. Only then did my grandfather take his eyes from the ball. He looked left to see the motorman's face, florid and breathing fire, inside the cab of the car where it had stopped not more than 10 feet from where Grandpa stood. Then he looked right, searching for a barrel-chested man along the sidelines, and found him. The man with the stout build and patchy hair shook his head from side to side, turned, and slowly walked away. Grandpa played on, and on, and on. Trolley dodgers? Not my grandfather. He was a baseball man.